Welcome to the Bird Joy Podcast. I'm Dexter Patterson.
And I'm Jason Hall. This is the podcast for all the bird nerds and homies out there that want to find a little bird joy.
Yes. And are you ready for some more bird joy? Keeping up with the trend of season 2, we have another guest for you all today to give you another dose of that bird joy. Are y'all ready?
Let's go. Yeah, I'd like to bring to the table the homie, Jordan Rowley. Jordan is a PhD student at Utah State University. And so welcome, Jordan. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Wait,
man. Thanks
so
for...
Did you say Utah State and then your name is Jordan? And I'm sitting here in Wisconsin. And wait a minute. We got a certain quarterback that, is pretty dope by the name of Jordan Love that came to us via Utah State.
Oh yeah.
That's a little cheesehead in me, man. I was like, wait, Jordan, Utah State. Yeah, only I would come up with that. But yes, welcome to the show, Jordan.
Thank you.
Awesome. So Jordan focuses his research on social science surrounding birders and bird watchers. When he's not researching, you can find him out in the field exploring Utah's diverse landscapes and filming bird adventures for his YouTube channel, Bright Eye Birding. As a husband, dad, and avid birder, Jordan is passionate about sharing his love for nature with his family and his online community. And I can say I have been the recipient of one of these bird adventures. When I was out there for Black Birders Week in 2024, we went and found the McGillivray's warbler and got some bonus Hammond's flycatcher action. It was a beautiful morning out there exploring, and it was really kind of a good example of what it means to have a welcoming and inclusive birding community kind of anywhere you go in the country. So Jordan, thank you for that, man. And again, we're so happy to have you here, bro.
Yeah, no problem. It was really fun going out birding with you. Leela, my partner, doesn't get to go birding very often. We have a 3-year-old, so that makes things a little bit hard. That's one of our favorite birding memories to this day. Just saying that we'll find the McGillivray's warbler and then actually delivering on that was incredible.
Yeah, it doesn't always happen that way, right? The pressure was on. I was like, well, let me see what this dude's all about. He said, yeah, we can find a warbler. Let's see what's good, So
let's go.
It was awesome. Delivered. The homie delivered. I think we had more than one too. We only saw one, but we had a few singing on that trip, and it was absolutely beautiful. Yeah, man. So like, how did you, was birding always part of your life? Because, looking at some of your research in social science, like, when did you get into that?
No, it wasn't always part of my life, at least birding how I do it now. As a kid, I was fascinated with nature, and I had a grandmother who fed hummingbirds, right? So she had a hummingbird feeder. She would, to this day, she wouldn't call herself a birder, but she definitely inspired a love of birds in me. So I started collecting field guides as a kid, and I would just flip through them, and I never actually went out and found those birds. It was always like a dream to be able to go see. I think mountain bluebird was definitely that bird that I wanted to find. And yeah, I need that bird. I need that bird in my life. Like,
it doesn't disappoint.
Yeah, there's this void, and I always wake up with this empty feeling, like, what is my life? What am I doing with my life? Because I've never seen a mountain bluebird, and, there's just a little bit of blue in me, a little bit of sadness every day when I wake up knowing that I have not seen that bird. Maybe, Jordan, someday I'll have to come out to your neck of the woods and you can get me on a mountain bluebird.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're incredible birds. For those at home, I mean, definitely Google it if you haven't seen one before, but just that pure blue top to bottom it just caught my eye immediately. I was like, wow, I can't believe something like that can look so colorful in nature. I actually ended up finding that bird long before I became a birder. That was probably the spark experience that I had. But it was just recently, the last couple of years, that I started using, I discovered eBird, and then I was hooked, after that. And then once meeting the birding community, it was like, okay, I study human behavior. Nobody is studying birders. There's definitely studies out there, but it's not a mainstream topic. So I was like, I got to bring this into the research field.
That is fascinating. I love people watching as it is, but to study birders, I mean, dude, like you kind of living a life right now.
Yeah, you'd be a good sociologist.
Meet new birders, study behavior. I always say it's like when you find something that doesn't feel like work, you're not working a job, right? Like that's a career. So I always tell my students, make your passion, make make sense early in life. Because when you're doing what you love and you're passionate about it, it's like you don't feel that grind. The grind doesn't feel like the grind so much. You're just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So to hear that you get to study birders and birds is like absolutely fascinating. How do you ever change jobs?
Yeah. No, it's so true. And it took a little bit of convincing, right? Because for a lot of people, birding is very niche. It's a very niche hobby. But what we don't realize is there are, I believe, according to a 2023 study, there are 96 million birders in the US alone. And that's counting, people that sit outside in their backyards and watch birds. If we're going to talk about people that travel to go find birds, that's above 40 million. That's bigger than some states in the US. It definitely needs to be looked at and studied. And it's exciting to see that more research is going that direction.
I had to go look some stuff up because I don't know what sociology is. I didn't really go down that path in my education. So when I was reading it, defined as the scientific study of human social life, social change, and the social causes and consequences of human behavior. And so I'm thinking about it, and Dexter mentioned people watching, right? It seems a lot like birding, but for people, right? Like if I read it right, if I just change the word, the scientific study of bird life, bird change, and so like as you're doing this, right? Like I imagine, like you said, not a lot of people are studying birders as a indicating group of social change, right? Do you find any similarities between the way birds organize themselves and adapt to change and humans? And like, I'm so fascinated by the connection of those two things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, as human beings, we are very, very socialized. A lot of our behavior, if not all of our behavior, is learned. We learn it from somewhere, and bad behavior or good behavior is passed down through our societal structures. And there's on the bird side of things, I'm not as versed, but you see birds that learn from each other, right? Bird behavior is very, very structured as well. And birds are a lot of people, I feel like they don't give birds as much credit for being intelligent creatures, but they're so smart. I was in Utah. Because we're out west, there's a big duck hunting season. I'm sure it's the same out, in the Midwest, probably 100%. Across the U.S. Yeah. And you see those ducks occupying those non-huntable ponds. Like they know where to go for sanctuary, and people don't give them the credit that they deserve. As human beings, we are not too far off from our non-human like friends out there in the animal kingdom. And we learn our behavior in a much is the same way as birds learn their behavior, through structures and through learning it from somebody else. It's pretty fascinating.
You kind of focus on the social aspect or social impact of birds and birders. Can you explain to our audience a little bit more about that as non-sociologists?
Yeah. So I got to shout out my team real quick, just because so much work went into this project. I have Dr. Kirsten Vignetta here at the Utah State University, Dr. Jules Bacon at Grinnell College, and then another fellow student, Graham Ward, at Grinnell College. And we focused on multi-species justice. And I want to break that down a little bit. I have my notes here. Essentially, multi-species justice is kind of a newer framework. It's emerged in the last 5 years. It kind of rejects this idea that we as humans are exceptional. We are not the only things that matter on our planet. Our policies, our behaviors affect everything. And we are part of nature, not apart from nature, right?
Uh-oh. You speaking Jason's language right now.
I feel like we're about to go to church. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. I like this.
Yeah. So it's a pretty cool concept. And multi-species justice really integrates justice for humans and more than human species. We know that birding, for example, has usually been focused on the welfare of birds, but it often ignores the welfare of marginalized communities in the process. And so we're trying to look at it through this lens of it's all interconnected. If part of the chain breaks, then the whole chain breaks. The system's broken. One of the main things we focused on for this project, it's a pretty broad umbrella. We sent out a big survey, right, to organizations across the US, 152 organizations, and we got back 572 responses. And it is pretty broad, so I can get into a little bit of that maybe later. One of the things we focused on was the renaming initiative. and birders' attitudes towards that. And that really ties into that multi-species justice. You know, you see this thing that doesn't really impact birds. They don't really care what they're called. They don't know, but it definitely it's a human justice issue. And that's all interconnected at the end of the day.
I love that Christian was on the show and talked about that because he's been recently giving some keynotes on that topic. So I love this. This is so.
I can't help but think about we did a birding trip out to Central Park in May, and we went to the Rockaways in New York, which is a historically Black community, but it's also a key nesting habitat on the beach for the piping plover. And you know, we were hanging out with the folks from the NYC Plover Project. They were talking about how that very thing exists, where they're trying to preserve the beach for these plovers. But if I'm a Black community member there, my beach is the only beach getting shut down. Right now, I can't go to the beach with my family because of these little birds. And so I don't know that a lot of communities have even heard the term multi-species justice. And I feel like we'd be in a better space if we took that approach right off the bat and said, hey, we need to do this for everybody, rather than just, hey, we need to save the plover. Because there are a lot of communities that are impacted by that more than others. We can get into your data a little bit, because I kind of want to know, like, what kind of data are you collecting, and what do you plan on doing with it?
Yeah. So it's kind of a mixed methods project, right? So as social scientists, we do a lot of qualitative research, which is interviews, observations, people watching. Like Dexter was saying, we did key informant interviews. We tried to get, now these aren't just like, general population. We went out and we found people, a representative group of people to speak on the bird name change issue, members from the LGBTQ community, BIPOC birders, and just to get that perspective from everybody. One group that we could not get to talk to us were people that opposed the name changes. This is an anonymous.
They're so mad.
Yeah. What did Christian say? We got to let go of the anger, right?
Yep.
We gotta let go of the anger, and hopefully, maybe as they start to see like the process, and he mentioned that they're gonna take it slow. So one name at a time. Maybe they start to slowly let go of that anger, and maybe they'll start to open up to maybe move into like, hey, we'll talk to you about this now.
Yeah. And, it's interesting, too, because this is all anonymous, right? Ethical science requires you to be anonymous.
Yeah, that makes it even more fascinating. Like they really just don't want to. They're mad still. Yeah, that's a mad. Like I'm mad still.
Yeah. And I in contacting some people, I got a lot of varied responses. And sometimes it was just as plain and simple as like, I just don't want to talk to you. So that was one limitation of the project. I really wish we would have gotten, because you want things to be representative of everybody. The survey did go out to a whole bunch of people. And some of the data we got back, at least on the renaming of the birds, was 48% of people agreed with name changes. And that's actually significant, because 29% were neutral and only 22% disagreed. Right. So you have this case of a very, I think, loud minority out there pushing back against these bird name changes, when really the wide majority of birders agree with that movement. I have a little bit more data too. And some of this stuff might not come as a shock, but I think it's really important to sometimes as humans, we just assume people think a certain way, but it's really good when we can get that data down on paper and show that birders think a certain way. Respondents that were more likely to support the initiative, several of these groups included non-binary birders, low-income birders, and birders with no religious affiliation were more likely to. Those were statistically significant. And then respondents less likely to support the initiative were straight birders, non-Democrat Party birders, especially Republicans, and the older birders as well, the older generation. Those were some of the highlights of the bird name changes from a more quantitative statistical point of view.
Sure. It's not surprising. It's kind of breaking the way a lot of things break. And it is always interesting, right? Because I met other folks in Salt Lake City as well, in particular some folks that were advocating for the conservation of the lake and kind of what's happening there. And you see the same thing break in the same way, right? That those younger, more diverse groups are pushing for some of these changes to ways that we do things, right? And so it's not surprising to see it here. It is surprising, though, that there's so many folks that are kind of ambivalent to it and kind of can, maybe make a choice one way or the other. And that's why I think it's important the way we the way we frame this for people, right? And I go back to that multi-species justice concept that you brought up at the beginning, right? It's like, I wonder if those 29% are more persuadable if they feel like they are part of a bigger system, or if they would be threatened when we say you're not exceptional and you're part of a bigger system, right? Like, it's kind of a hard concept, I think, for humans to get through, that we are part of a larger thing rather than the apex of the thing.
No,
absolutely.
Yeah. So many people, they walk around like the world revolves around them. You know, I always tell people, when I had kids, that's when I figured it out. That's when it like snapped, where I was like, oh, guess what, dude? This world is nothing about you, right? Like, you are one part of this greater thing that's beyond you personally. So I like this. I like this framework. I think there's legs to it. So hopefully you continue to build on it and continue the research. And I know many of our listeners fall into those groups that you mentioned, and we're constantly on this show trying to advocate for those folks and differently able people and people of all walks of life, because I feel like so many of us, when you add us all up together, it's a big group. You know, what was that number you mentioned earlier, Jordan? How many birders in the world or in the country?
90+ million.
That's crazy, right? Like,
yeah.
So I'm just like, all right,
big block.
We trying to advocate for all of them, right? And especially the ones in that group that maybe weren't even counted in that enormous number, which is kind of crazy, right? To think that like there's so many of us that are out there, like we are out here. But when you start to just see all these different groups and all these different clubs and organizations and people doing this work, I get inspired, because I know that the birding community is growing. Then we can have these conversations. Already only a couple episodes into this season, we're having conversations that I feel like can help spark whatever that might be, to start getting the needle moved in certain areas, and especially for some of these groups that typically go ignored when we're talking about birding and just even bird habitats. And like we've had, Jason and I were on a podcast where we're talking about the, green space and the limited green space that there is in some of these in some of these low income neighborhoods, which that changes the birds that you see. There's so much research that can be done even in that relationship, right? Like where you live and what birds do you see and the impact of that. Dude, like I'm really excited to kind of see where you go with this and how this data develops and changes or not, or grow, whatever happens over time. I'm really, really fascinated to see where this goes.
You mentioned one of my favorite studies of all time, that redlining and tree canopy bird diversity study. That's a multi-species justice issue, right? Historically, redlining neighborhoods to create segregation in this country, investing in trees and planting trees in, white neighborhoods really reduces diversity of birds in BIPOC neighborhoods, right? And I think, you mentioned 29%. What can we do about the 29% of people that are on the fence? Science is very hard science, numbers and stuff. It's kind of disconnecting sometimes, because as humans, we're not. And what I love about social science and qualitative research is you can talk to people and you can get their stories. I have a quote here from one of our participants, and this was a white straight birder. And they said, I don't care if it's called a Cooper's hawk, because it didn't impact my history or my ancestry, but if it did to you and it's a big deal for you and it's not a big deal to me, I should bend to that. I should accept that. I'm not stuck with old dames. And if it's offensive, get rid of it. And so I think if more people had that perspective, like, why are we hanging on to some of this stuff that doesn't impact us? It doesn't impact, these names don't have any negative or positive impact to white people across the board. And this birder is really expressing this. They're saying, if it doesn't matter, but it's impacting somebody else, we should bend to that. It matters to them. And it should, because it matters to them, it should matter to us too.
Multi-species.
And so I think it's just so important that science takes the emotion out of things sometimes. Social science, in a lot of ways, puts that emotion back in and makes this stuff human and makes these stories human and makes us realize, you know what, this is important.
Yeah, man. Wow. this is going to be really exciting. We have another homie, Deja Perkins, who does research on citizen science data, especially that data coming from urban communities, marginalized communities. And so I'm definitely going to have to connect you two, because I hear a lot of what she has talked to me about, or Dexter about, when we were hanging out before, and some of the research you're doing. So maybe that's a good connection we can make there. But let's flip over to the YouTube channel, which is kind of like, that's kind of like where I first, like when we met, and then I, was able to see your YouTube channel. I was like, oh, my homie is out here. He's out here like going on birding adventures all the time. And you even made one from our adventure with the McGillivray's warbler, right? Which was super awesome. And so the YouTube channel is called Bright Eyed Birding, and you just take people on these adventures. So like, number one, why did you decide to start that? And did you land on that format right up front, or did you kind of have to come to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, the point of the YouTube channel is not too much different than y'all's podcast over here, bringing that bird joy to other people. I would go out birding and I'd see, in my opinion, I would see the most fascinating stuff. I was seeing, I would see ruby crowned kinglets and red-winged blackbirds, and just like this incredible array of things that I didn't look at that stuff before. And, I see, and I'd be looking at an osprey in a tree, like 10 feet above me. And then these people would just be walking underneath me oblivious. I was like, how are you not seeing this? It's kind of like, I felt like I was in a dream. And so I'd come home and I'd tell people, I'd say, I saw this bird today. And then I'd show them a picture and they'd be like, oh, that's cool. And it was kind of like you had one of those, you had to be there moments. And so I said, what if I started filming birds, filming these adventures and putting them on YouTube? So not only my family could watch them, my daughter could watch it as she grew up, but also so other people around the world could discover this thing that I found so incredible. And it was just all about bringing that bird joy into whoever could stumble across it on YouTube. Yeah. So it's just about bringing that joy to other people.
I love it.
Have you, do you have one or two of those experiences that if I told folks to go look at your YouTube channel today, we were like, hey, if you want to see Jordan freak out like a 5-year-old child when he sees a bird, like which one should they go find?
Yeah, in what we call ourselves bird tubers, right? In the YouTube community, and I have a kind of this rap of being the highly enthusiastic one when I find birds, and so honestly, any of those episodes, but one that comes to mind specifically is it's very early on. I went searching for California condors.
Oh, God.
And I went to Navajo Bridge, which is an amazing place to, probably, in my opinion, the best place in the world to see condors up close, and got to film those condors and share a little bit about their comeback story. Right. And I would definitely check out the video with Jason in it, where we find that McGillivray's warbler. That was a lot of fun.
Dancing. Yeah, we did do some dancing in that video. Pretty sure.
Yeah, we were
Life for dance.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, pretty much.
I would approve. We had Ike on last week.
That's awesome.
That is so cool.
Just fun stuff. It's just so fun. And, I get a lot of joy about bringing non-birders birding, or people that just, they're curious about it. They're like, why do you spend 10 plus hours a week doing this thing? And most of the time they get it. They get it when they see that bald eagle flying over, or they see that red-winged blackbird perched up nicely singing for them. They get it.
I love it. I mean, I basically literally do the same thing on my Instagram, where it's just like going out in these first person documentary style birding adventures and trying to bring as many people along as possible. Like I always say, thanks for joining me. And I love it because it really talks about another conversation that we're pretty passionate about, where we're thinking about this multi-species framework, is accessibility, where it's just like there are also a lot of people that would love to go out birding with the Wisco birder, would love to go birding with Jordan, but they just can't, or they don't live near you, or they'll never be able to get to this specific habitat. They just don't, it's not going to happen for them. So I think sometimes we don't realize how we're helping the birding community and leading the birding community by making birding more accessible, making people say, dang, like, look how excited excited these guys are about birds. Like, maybe I should just like pay attention because there's a freaking osprey 10 feet ahead above me. Like, I'd probably walk up to that person and shake them, like, what is wrong with you? It's a freaking osprey. How dare you?
Yeah.
I just think that's awesome. And I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how you see these, these birding videos and these adventures that we all go on. Like, we're all sharing these type of adventures with people, help with accessibility in the birding community.
I think I love watching you and Jason's exploration videos on Instagram. There's so much joy in that. And for someone with a little bit of social anxiety myself, it is hard sometimes to just get up and say, I'm going to go on this bird walk with people I've never met before. That's, to me, for some people, that's not scary. To me, that's scary. I am very anxious around, new people. And it's just always been a part of life for me. And being able to kind of go along on these journeys with you guys for 10, 20 seconds, it kind of makes you feel like you have community. Yeah. People comment on those videos that may not walk up to you and talk to you in person because that's easier for them. And for me too, there's so many people in my comments that say, I love going birding with you. And while I'm out there in the field, I make sure I remember that. I act like I'm talking to them so they can feel like they're there. And hopefully my hope is that as they watch those videos, they come closer to being able to actually go on some of those in-person bird walks. They start to feel a little bit more comfortable around birding. They start to feel a little bit more comfortable with the community. And I think, just being able to bring as many people together, like thousands of people watch those videos on Instagram, thousands of people watch these videos on YouTube. That's impactful. That's super impactful.
It sure is.
He brought in community, Jay. I love it.
I know. I told you Jordan was the guy. I don't even know why anybody even doubts me.
This is great.
Doing that and being able to reach out to the community is it's this beautiful through line to your research as well, right? It's because those are the things that are going to make the difference with helping people get back to that space of understanding where they fit in this system. As you are kind of, you live in Utah, and what is it like to bird out there? You mentioned some social anxiety of rolling up to new people that you never met, right? You came to my bird walk in Salt Lake City. I ended up going hiking with some folks that I met through some mutual contacts and got my ass kicked hiking up some mountain somewhere, which if you've never been to Salt Lake City, Utah, it's like a valley. But if you want to go hiking, you're going straight up. Like every trail is like this ridiculous climb to the top of something. Let me say this. On the East Coast, we believe in switchbacks, right? We believe in taking our time getting up a mountain. Not on the West Coast. On the West Coast, it's just like, oh, we're just going to make this trail go straight up the side of this mountain. No rest, no nothing. So that was the moment where I was like, I got to get my life together and get in shape. What is it like in the birding community out there in Salt Lake City or in Utah? Have you found that it's a little harder to break into? Have you found that your YouTube page helps you do that? Like, what is it like? What's the vibe?
Yeah, it's a really good question, causing me to reflect a lot on where I'm at. The birding community, I think, is in Utah is very similar to a lot of bird communities across the states. You have these Facebook groups and that do meetups, and they're pretty active. But Utah's in a line, right? It's 8 hours north to south. There's one road that goes through the whole thing. It's if there's an event going on up north, if there's an event going on up north, you can't come up from the south end and be there without taking a day trip and staying over in a hotel. And I think that's what's kind of hard. There's not events across the state. There's events in concentrated areas. And I think they do a really good job with those bird walks and, making them very family oriented. Bring your kids. Who cares if they make a ton of noise? We might see some birds and that might be impactful for the kids, stuff like that. So I think from that side of things, it's really good. I do think that it's not as widespread as I would like it to be. Most of my social bird outings have to do with the YouTube channel, people reaching out and visiting from other states, going to, some of these events meeting with Jason and asking if he was going birding tomorrow, seeing if we could come along, stuff like that. So that's typically where I get a lot of my social interaction. Also from the study, I get to to interview a lot of people, and I meet people that way who are birders, and they're like, you could come birding with me sometime. And that's how I've actually gotten a ton of life birds, from the research side of things as well. So I do think that, I look at some of your communities, I look at your BIPOC birding clubs, and I see how united you guys are. And I envy that a little bit. I think I wish we had a little bit more of that here as well.
Well, listen, I mean, when you're done with your PhD, because I know that's a lot of work, let us know, right? If you need a little help starting your little nonprofit birding club or something like that, you know who to reach out to, man. Because it's, we tell people all the time, like you can be that change in your own community, and we appreciate you recognizing that, because it does take a little bit of work. And I asked the question because Philadelphia County is so dense, right? So I got people everywhere, right? And so once we got off the ground, Philadelphia also has a pretty, the birders are closer together. So it's easier to find more birders and interact and share information, where I agree, Utah is just massive. There's more land than people, where it's different in Philly, right? So, I kind of wanted to know what that was like, right? Because everyone I met there, we did a walk at the Nature Center at Pia Okwai. I think I'm saying that right. Downtown Salt Lake City, where, we hosted a bird walk for Black Birders Week, and that's where I met Jordan. And there were so many new birders there, right? There's people that, I was surprised. I was like, man, y'all live in this place with these kinds of orioles and all these damn hummingbirds you guys get, like this embarrassment of riches, and y'all never been birding.
Yeah.
And so I look at that and I say, man, there's a lot of communities like that where the action potential, go back into the molecular biology bag, the action potential is massive. Like you have so much space to create something. And I imagine there's a lot of communities like that out there. And so hopefully, folks are listening to this and understanding that, like, you can do it. You don't have to be doing a PhD to do it necessarily, right? But there's a lot of people out there that they go watch Jordan's videos and they're like, man, and all they can think about now is, when am I going to put myself in a position to go see a condor? Myself included, because I've never seen one.
Add me to that list.
Yeah. Maybe this is how we start the group chat. This is how we start the group chat to go on the trip. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Done and done.
There's this issue, and it's probably in other states as well, but according to I'm a research guy, so I'm going to say according to such and such a study a lot of times. But
flex on them. Go ahead.
2016, there's a study a demographic study of birders, and they found that 94.8% of the birders in 2016 were white. Right? There's structural forces in place. This is not just something that's happened. It's outdoor recreation across the board. Can people feel safe? Can non-white people feel safe in these outdoor spaces? I've done a lot of projects for class and trying to get different perspectives for class projects and studies. And one of those, I was trying to find non-white birders in my home county of Cache County to interview. And I went down that top 100 list for the year, find an active birder. The only non-white birder in the whole county was my partner, Leela, on that list. And can't interview her because she knows me. It wouldn't be a great study. But I just think that when you did your event, Jason, I was so happy because so many people came out to that event. People that I don't normally see, at your local Audubon Society events. And I think that's so important. And can we make birding? That's why I love about your BIPOC birding clubs. It makes everybody feel welcome. Anybody is welcome there if they have a desire to go birding. There's just this issue of feeling safe in the state of Utah and bringing people from all walks of life together that I think needs to be addressed moving forward.
Yeah. And there's space to do it, man. What do you like? So, let's, I want to get to the nitty gritty now. All right. Like,
okay.
What bird is at the top of the list? All right. And I'm going to ask you in two parts, right? Which one is at the top of the list? Which one is at the top of the list to see in general, like lifer? And which one is at the top of the list to get content for YouTube? And it's okay if they're the same, because I remember when we went out and we saw we saw, you said you had heard McGillivray's before, but you'd never seen them that well. And I was like, oh, this dude is really looking for top quality content to get to his viewers, right? He's not going, like, I know you were like, the Hammond's flycatcher was backlit and you were like, it'll do, but it's not the best, right? So like, what are those two birds, or are they the same bird?
That's a really good question. I have so many lists of birds, U.S. birds, international birds. the bird that I want to see the most during my lifetime is the pink robin. The little Australian, honestly, Tasmania is where it occupies mostly. It comes onto the mainland a little bit, but it's this little tiny gray bird with a beautiful bright pink breast.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. So, I just Googled it. Google it, people. I'll put it in the show.
It looks like it should be on a keychain, like all
sweet Lord.
Like,
it looks like it should be a shape in a bowl of Lucky Charms. Like that's what it looks like.
Ornament or something, you know?
Sweet Lord.
It's AI generated. It almost looks AI generated. It doesn't look real. And it's the bird I send to people. I have a lot of people in my life that get confused by AI generated birds, and they send them to me and they say, "This is my new favorite bird." And I say that's great, but it doesn't exist. Right?
It's not real.
Yeah. So then I send them this bird and I say, "Well, what about this?" And they're just shocked that you can find pink like that in nature. So that's probably the number one bird I want to see during my lifetime. As far as getting content for, and by content, I don't want to make that sound too currency like, you know what I mean? It's more about sharing that bird with people so they can see it. That's why I'm so passionate about getting stuff on camera. Great gray owl, hands down. I hopefully will see one. I think I'm going to Oregon this spring. There's an opportunity there, and we will see if that happens. But yeah, great gray owl is probably top of my list. That and Montezuma quail. That's the other one.
Oh yeah. That's a good one.
I would love to film.
Yeah.
The great gray. I need to get the Zagzim bog to see that.
Yeah, man. First of all, Dexter, there's no excuse for you. All right. Because I literally, when I went there, I drove past you to get up there and see one. So like you get it together, brother.
I know.
Maybe I'll just come scoop you next time after I bang that right in Chicago.
I'm gonna go. There's a lot of people up there.
Yeah, we'll go up there and see Dudley.
Yeah, see Dudley.
Yeah. So like the Montezuma quail, is that one that you've seen and you just need to get content for, or like have you only heard it? Like
never seen it, never heard it. It would be a life for me.
Wow.
First time. I just think they look incredible. Cool. They look so cool. That little patterning on their faces is so interesting. So it's also a hard bird to see. You know, it's a skulky bird. Quails in general are hard to see. You usually hear them, but that would just be such an awesome experiest, I think.
Looks like they got a mullet too.
Yeah,
that's actually kind of cool. That's dope. Yeah, it looks like they're like in Mexico and deep southwest USA.
That's crazy. Yes. So Jordan, you had mentioned, in regards to the work and survey stuff that you were doing, that you in your area, you're going through and you don't see any people from like underrepresented groups, but then you show up at Jason's event and there's people everywhere. When you think about the YouTube channel, it like opens us up to people all over the place, and you got subscribers and fans all over the world. Are you able to ever just like apply any of your study to how you interact with other birders and people on the channel, or when you're on walks? I'm really curious about that.
For me, it's just about talking about research isn't accessible. I'm just going to say academic research is not accessible to the general public. It's hard to get into. A lot of times it's behind a paywall. It often makes me wonder why the heck we're even doing it in the first place if people can't look at it. And so what I really like doing is things like this podcast, right? Is getting on there and just talking about things that I've learned, trying to amplify, maybe marginalized voices who are often ignored on the channel. I spent the week before Jason came on the channel and went looking for the McGillivray's Warbler. I talked a little bit on Blackbirders Week, just trying to bring it into the community on YouTube. It's overwhelmingly white as well. There are no creators and if I'm wrong on this, please send them my way. But as far as I can see, there's not a lot of women creators. First of all, we need more women on YouTube, and there's not a lot of BIPOC YouTubers in the birding space. And I'm not saying, that's where people should, that's the responsibility right there to get the information. But on the channel, try to amplify those voices. I talk a lot about Christian Cooper's book, tried to talk about that stuff. There's people that get mad. And I'll take that all day, as long as you can make more people feel welcome. I get comments all the time. I was going to read a few of them here, but totally forgot to write them down. But after you came on the podcast, there were people in the comments section saying thank you. Thank you for being here. I know Leela was very appreciative. She talked to you about, not seeing representation in birding, and that is so important. And so it's about amplifying those voices. If there's any people who aspire or want to be a birding YouTuber, but they don't know where to start, shoot me a message on Instagram and I will be there with you every step of the way. We just need those voices out there.
If you can see it, you can be it. That's it.
That's
you know?
right.
Like, I just love it. I love it. I love it. I felt like that, before in my own community where I'd be like at these places and I'm the only person of color going to event after event, never seeing anybody that looks like me leading an event, flying milk. Just like,
you say flying milk? I never heard that one. That must be a Midwest thing. Oh man,
so,
that's crazy.
Mom always told me you're either a part of the problem or you're gonna be a part of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
So
love it.
When all that stuff was happening with Christian and all the social justice movements happening all over the country during that time with Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, like it was all kind of meshing together at that point, where it was just like enough is enough. We started our club. Our mission is to get more people of color outside, but we are a birding club for every single person. That's one thing that I'm always clear with people about. Like, yes, my mission is to get more people of color outside, but if you support that, just come on. You're my people. If you support that mission, you are welcome as well. And that's what people typically see is, I feel like when I get to, I go to our events, I feel like our events represent the country, like people see people of all walks of life and colors and shades and ages. And that's how it should be, and that when we're thinking about this multi-species lens on the world, that's what I think that our clubs provide and kind of walking the walk in that when it comes to that.
Jordan, thank you, brother, for coming to hang out with us. Like, super awesome. Just so interesting to hear about your research. If people want to get in touch with you and we either talk about the research or check out the YouTube or the Instagram, like where can they find you? Because I imagine there's going to be some homies out there that are like, oh, I need to send an email real quick to this dude.
You can find me, usually Instagram, I think is the easiest. So at Bright Eyed Birding. It's also brighteyedbirding@gmail.com. So Bright Eyed Birding on everything. Thank you so much for having me, guys. This was awesome.
Yeah, man. That's the YouTube channel too. Bright Eyed Birding.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
So you guys can get some bright eyes and go find the homie. Definitely check out, like literally sometimes like when I get through all the algorithm that my son put on my YouTube channel of weird video gameplay, eventually it'll get down to Jordan's videos and cup of coffee and 10, 15 minutes. And I promise you will feel so much better. Like just watching the journey. He really covers it from like, what do I want to do? What do I want to see? Am I going to see it? Teases some things you got to wait and see. And it really, I think, captures what it's like, that joy line that we've talked about in previous episodes of the pursuit and seeing something new and getting that payoff and appreciating it and finding your joy. So thank you again, Jordan, for being with us, man. This was so awesome. And so, we'll definitely talk to you again at some point in the future.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
And thank you everybody out there for joining us today on the Bird Joy podcast. We hope you enjoyed exploring the world of birding with us and Jordan. Make sure y'all go check out his YouTube channel, subscribe, go get some of that bird joy that Jordan has to offer.
And as we wrap up here, as usual, shout out to the homies at In Color Birding in Philly. We got some events coming up for the fall and the winter, so check us out at incolorbirding.org.
Yes, sir. Shout out to the BIPOC flock, and make sure you please share, subscribe, and shout out the podcast to all your fellow birders and help us spread a little bird joy. This was fun.
All right, brother. Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks again, homie.
Thanks for joining us, Jordan.
Thank you.